Hae-min Lee was born in South Korea on October 15, 1980. In 1992, she emigrated to the United States with her mother, Young Kim, and her brother, Young Lee, where they joined her grandparents in Maryland. After relocating, she became a student at Woodlawn High School in Baltimore County, Maryland, where she was enrolled in a magnet program. Hae was known as an active and talented student who participated in sports, including lacrosse and field hockey. Her school life reflected a structured academic and athletic routine, showing her involvement in both studies and extracurricular activities. This section establishes her background as a Korean-American teenager adjusting to life in the United States. It highlights her family migration, education path, and personal interests without adding any external interpretation. Her identity as a student-athlete at Woodlawn High School becomes an important foundation for understanding her daily routine leading up to 1999 events. On January 13, 1999, Hae-min Lee was last seen by fellow students at Woodlawn High School at approximately 2:15 p.m. that same day. She failed to pick up her younger cousin from daycare, which led her family to report her missing. Police began contacting her friends and acquaintances in an attempt to locate her. Officers reached her ex-boyfriend, Adnan Side, around 6:30 p.m., who stated that he last saw her when school ended. Later, at around 1:30 a.m., police contacted her then current boyfriend, who said he had returned home at 7 p.m. This section focuses on the timeline of her disappearance, the immediate concern from her family, and the early police response. A dog-led search was conducted near Woodlawn High School on February 6th, indicating growing urgency in the investigation. The emphasis remains on verified movements, witness statements, and early search efforts without speculation or assumptions introduced here. On February 9, 1999, Hae-min Lee's partially buried body was discovered in Leakin Park, Baltimore, by Alonzo Sellers. Police escalated the case into homicide investigation. On February 12th, an anonymous call directed focus to Adnan Side. Investigation shifted toward suspects linked to Hae's personal life. Jay Wilds, a friend of Side, told police Side confessed and he helped bury the body. Wilds accepted a plea deal for accessory to murder. His testimony became key prosecution evidence. On February 16th, police obtained Side's phone records. Records were used to analyze movements and communications. Investigation intensified with witness testimony and digital records. These combined elements rapidly strengthened the case, linking witness statements with cellular data, and marking a significant escalation in the coalition in the investigation as authorities built a timeline of events surrounding the disappearance and discovery of Hae-min Lee's body during the early stages of the homicide inquiry. Process initiated officially. Adnan Side was arrested on February 28, 1999, and charged with first-degree murder in connection with the death of Hae-min Lee. The Baltimore Police Department's investigation had gathered witness testimony, including statements from Jay Wilds, as well as cellular phone records that were used as part of the case. Following his arrest, Side's family hired defense attorney Christina Gutierrez to represent him. The charges against him included kidnapping, false imprisonment, robbery, and first-degree murder. Wilds' testimony, combined with phone records, formed the backbone of the prosecution's early case narrative. This section focuses strictly on the arrest timeline and legal charges without entering into trial analysis. It establishes the formal beginning of Side's legal proceedings and the transition from investigation to prosecution. The seriousness of the charges and the reliance on witness testimony are central to understanding how the case moved forward into court proceedings at that early legal stage. Adnan Side's first trial began in December 1999, but ended in a mistrial after a courtroom incident involving a sidebar dispute between defense attorney Cristina Gutierrez, and the judge, during which the jury overheard part of the exchange, raising concerns about fairness in the proceedings. A second trial began in January 2000 and lasted approximately 6 weeks. On February 25, 2000, the jury found Said guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and robbery. He was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 30 years. Following the verdict, Said's family immediately terminated Gutierrez's services as his attorney. This section presents the formal courtroom outcome of the case, focusing on procedural events, trial structure, and final sentencing. It does not include analysis or outside commentary, only the documented progression from mistrial to conviction. Conviction marked the conclusion of the initial criminal trial phase and set the foundation for years of post-conviction legal challenges. In May 2010, Said filed for post-conviction relief, arguing ineffective assistance of counsel and introducing Asia McClain as an alibi witness who claimed she spoke with Said in the library at the time prosecutors alleged Hae Min Lee was attacked elsewhere. In 2014, the petition was denied, but appellate courts later reopened aspects of the case during subsequent review proceedings. From 2015 to 2016, the court revisited multiple issues, including McClain's affidavit and cell phone tower evidence. In June 2016, a judge vacated Said's conviction, citing ineffective assistance of counsel related to failure to challenge expert testimony. In 2018, the Maryland Court of Special Appeals upheld the decision for a new trial. In 2019, the Maryland Court of Appeals reversed the lower courts in a split ruling, denying a new trial. In 2019, court acknowledged counsel deficiencies, but found insufficient likelihood of different outcome. And Supreme Court rejected appeal petition review. In 2014, the case gained international attention when the podcast serial covered Hae Min Lee's murder and Adnan Syed's conviction. Produced by the creators of This American Life and hosted by Sarah Koenig, the series was downloaded over 100 million times by 2016, generating widespread public interest. Following Serial, multiple media projects emerged. The podcast Undisclosed examined the prosecution's case in detail, while Investigation Discovery released a documentary special analyzing evidence. Books by Asia McClain Chapman and Rabia Chaudhry were also published, offering personal perspectives and legal interpretations of the case. In 2019, HBO released a 4-part documentary series titled The Case Against Adnan Syed. These media productions kept public attention focused on the case and introduced broader discussion around the evidence and legal process. These productions expanded public engagement beyond courtroom records, sustaining global discussion about evidence, legal fairness, and differing interpretations of the case outcomes over time period. In 2022, new DNA testing was conducted on evidence collected in 1999, and Syed's DNA was not found on tested items. In March 2022, a court ordered additional DNA testing on Hae Min Lee's clothing, shoes, and rape kit. Later that year, prosecutors filed a motion to vacate Syed's conviction, citing Brady violations and alternative suspect evidence. On September 19, 2022, a judge vacated Syed's conviction, and he was released from prison. Prosecutors dropped the charges shortly after. However, in March 2023, an appellate court reinstated the conviction, citing procedural and notice issues related to victim representation. In August 2024, the Maryland Supreme Court upheld the reinstatement and ordered a new hearing. This period reflects significant legal reversals involving evidence disclosure, procedural fairness, and appellate review. These developments demonstrate shifting judicial outcomes across multiple appeals, emphasizing ongoing disputes over fairness, evidence handling, and conviction validity in appellate proceedings review process. In 2025, Baltimore State's Attorney, Evan Bates, withdrew the motion to vacate Syed's conviction but supported his sentence reduction under the Juvenile Restoration Act. Following a court hearing, Judge Jennifer Schiffer reduced Syed's sentence to time served on March 6, 2025, allowing him to remain free while the conviction itself remained in place. This section concludes the legal timeline, focusing on the final judicial outcome rather than relitigation of evidence. It outlines how the conviction status remained intact while the sentence was adjusted due to legal provisions related to juvenile offenders. The case concludes for now with Syed not incarcerated but still legally convicted, marking one of the most prolonged and complex post-conviction legal histories in Maryland's criminal justice system. The ruling reflects a narrow legal resolution, separating sentence relief from conviction status under Maryland post-conviction review standards while closing appellate reconsideration in this stage of proceedings for now here. In November 1985, human remains were discovered at Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire. A hunter found a 55-gallon metal drum near a burned-down store site. Inside were the bodies of an adult female and a young girl, wrapped in plastic. Both victims were confirmed to have died from blunt force trauma, and their identities were unknown. The victims were later buried in an Allenstown cemetery, with a tombstone marking them as unidentified. The inscription listed an unknown woman aged 23 to 33 and a girl aged 8 to 10. Found November 10, 1985, the case faced major investigative challenges. With no immediate leads, no identification, and no matching missing persons reports. This discovery marked the beginning of a long investigation into two unidentified homicide victims in a remote forested area. Despite autopsy confirmation of homicide, investigators had no immediate suspects or viable investigative leads at the time. On May 9, 2000, authorities uncovered a second 55-gallon barrel near the original crime scene. Inside were the remains of two additional young girls. Like the first two victims, both children had died from blunt force trauma. Investigators determined that all four victims were likely murdered around the same time, between 1977 and 1981. Despite the second barrel being missed during the original 1985 search, authorities later concluded that the barrel had been outside the initial search perimeter, explaining why it remained undiscovered for so long. The discovery of the second barrel transformed the case from a double homicide into a quadruple homicide investigation. However, the victims still remained unidentified. All four bodies were partially or fully skeletonized, making identification extremely difficult. This escalation highlights multiple victims linked to the same offender or event in the same geographic area, intensifying urgency for forensic breakthroughs. Investigations continued, with renewed forensic focus efforts. Postmortem. Forensic examination of four victims produced detailed biological profiles through autopsy and laboratory analysis. Adult female, estimated age 23 to 33. Curly or wavy brown hair, significant dental work including fill-ins and extractions. Possible Native American ancestry. Eldest girl age 5 to 11. Light brown wavy hair, earrings in both ears, pneumonia signs. Distinctive dental gap. Middle child, later identified as Ree Rasmussen. Age 2 to 4, brown hair, overbite, likely anemia. DNA confirmed biological daughter of Terry Petter Rasmussen. Initially mixed ancestry, later confirmed European descent. Youngest child age 1 to 3, light brown or blonde hair. Similar dental gap. All victims showed evidence of having lived together shortly before death, with isotopic and forensic analysis indicating recent presence in the northeastern United States. This section highlights biological and forensic profiles on early scientific efforts to understand victim origins and identity connections based on available forensic evidence analysis. In the early stages of the investigation, Authorities distributed information across the United States and parts of Canada. Despite extensive outreach, none of the victims were identified. At least 10 potential identifications were ruled out. As forensic technology advanced, the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, NCMEC, produced facial reconstructions in 2013 and again in 2015. These reconstructions incorporated dental structure to improve accuracy. Because eye color and skin tone could not be determined, the images were released in black and white. The investigation also included mitochondrial DNA testing in 2014, revealing that the adult female and 2 of the children were maternally related. By 2015, it was confirmed that the woman was the mother of 2 of the girls. This section focuses on the slow but evolving investigative process, highlighting how forensic reconstruction and DNA testing gradually provided clarity on family relationships among the victims, though identities unknown. In 2019, investigators identified 3 of the Bear Brook victims as members of the Honeychurch family. The mother was Marlace Elizabeth Honeychurch, and her 2 daughters were Marie Elizabeth Vaughn and Sarah Lynn McWaters. All 3 had disappeared around November 1978 from La Punta, California. Honeychurch reportedly left home after an argument with her mother and never contacted her family again. At the time, she was believed to be in a relationship with Terry Petter Rasmussen. Marie Vaughn and Sarah McWaters had different biological fathers and experienced custody changes in early life. Their disappearance remained unresolved for decades until genetic genealogy linked them to Bear Brook victims. In 2019, a funeral was held for Honeychurch and Vaughn, with family members attending. Sarah McWaters was buried separately in Connecticut. This breakthrough gave names to victims, transforming unidentified remains into a documented missing family connected to Rasmussen, marking a significant investigative and emotional breakthrough as decades of unidentified remains were finally restored to identity through genetic research and family tracing, providing closure for relatives and officially documenting their connection to the Bear Brook case, and to Terry Petter Rasmussen for the family and investigators alike in the long-running investigation process. Concluded. This section introduces Terry Petter Rasmussen as the central suspect. Initially known under aliases such as Robert Evans and Curtis Kimball, Rasmussen had a criminal history that included the murder of his wife Yoon Soon Jun in 2002, for which he was convicted and died in prison in 2010. Investigators later linked him to Denise Boudin, a woman who disappeared in 1981 in New Hampshire. DNA evidence confirmed Boudin's daughter had been abandoned by Rasmussen under an alias. Further genetic testing revealed Rasmussen was the biological father of the middle Bear Brook child, confirming his direct involvement in the case. Authorities determined he likely used multiple identities over decades and was responsible for several other murders. This section outlines how Rasmussen became the primary suspect through DNA evidence, criminal history, and behavioral patterns, establishing him as a serial offender connected to multiple missing persons cases, forming a critical investigative connection. Together. The final phase of the Bear Brook investigation focused on continued forensic advancements that ultimately resolved the identity of the 4th victim in 2025 as Ree Rasmussen. Earlier DNA testing had already confirmed that the child was the biological daughter of Terry Petter Rasmussen, but her maternal identity remained unknown. Subsequent investigative work linked her to Pepper Reed, a woman who had disappeared in the 1970s. Forensic genealogy and revised DNA analysis further refined earlier assumptions about her ancestry and geographical origins. Through collaboration between agencies and genetic genealogy specialists, her identity was progressively clarified over time. By 2025, authorities officially confirmed her identity as Ree Rasmussen, completing the identification of all 4 Bear Brook victims. This final confirmation concluded decades of investigation, demonstrating how sustained forensic progress resolved one of New Hampshire's most complex cold cases. The identification closed a long-standing gap in the case record and provided resolution for investigators and families involved after years of effort. Atan Khalil Patz was born on October 9, 1972, in the United States. He grew up in New York City's Soho neighborhood in Lower Manhattan, with his parents living at 113 Prince Street. His father, Stanley Patz, worked as a professional photographer, whose collection of images later became significant in public awareness efforts. He experienced a normal urban childhood in New York City during the late 1970s. His daily routine included school attendance and regular commuting within the neighborhood environment. This background establishes the context leading up to May 25, 1979, without interpretation or speculation. It also highlights how his father's photographs of Atan were later used extensively in missing child awareness campaigns across the United States. These documented details remain central to understanding his early life circumstances before his disappearance in New York City in 1979. Case Development Timeline Overview. On May 25, 1979, Atan Patz left his parents' Soho apartment at 113 Prince Street for the first time unaccompanied. He was walking just 2 blocks to reach his school bus stop at West Broadway and Prince Street. At the time, Atan was wearing a black Future Flight Captain pilot cap, a blue corduroy jacket, blue jeans, and blue sneakers with fluorescent stripes. He was expected to board the school bus and attend school as usual. However, Atan never arrived at the bus stop and did not get on the bus that morning. When he failed to return home after school, his mother began contacting friends and confirmed that he had not attended school and had not boarded the bus. This led to immediate concern, and the family contacted the police. The section focuses on the timeline of the disappearance and the immediate realization that something had gone wrong. It establishes last known details of Atan Patz's morning route precisely. After police were contacted, detectives initially considered the possibility of parental involvement, but quickly ruled out the Patz family as suspects. A large-scale search operation began that same evening, involving nearly 100 police officers and bloodhounds. The search expanded over the following weeks, covering neighborhoods across New York City. Police and local residents participated in canvassing efforts, distributing missing child posters featuring Atan's photograph. Despite extensive search efforts, the investigation produced few actionable leads. The absence of immediate physical evidence made the case particularly difficult from the outset. The section also highlights the widespread distribution of posters and the early use of Atan's image in public search efforts. The focus remains on official law enforcement activity, search procedures, and early investigative limitations. No speculative conclusions were introduced, and investigators continued relying on documented procedures while early leads failed to produce immediate breakthroughs in the missing child investigation. Efforts continued steadily throughout. Atan Patz's disappearance became a major catalyst for national and international awareness of missing children cases. His father's photographs were widely used in missing child posters, milk carton campaigns during the 1980s, and even projected in public spaces such as Times Square. The case contributed significantly to the rise of the missing children movement, leading to changes in public awareness, legislation, and child safety practices. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan designated May 25th, the anniversary of Atan's disappearance, as National Missing Children's Day in the United States. The section also explains how Atan's case became one of the earliest and most widely recognized missing child profiles in the United States, influencing how future missing persons cases were publicized. The emphasis is strictly on documented outcomes, media usage of his image, policy response, and the establishment of awareness campaigns. Overall, Atan Patz's case reshaped public communication about missing children through media exposure, awareness initiatives, and coordinated national safety efforts across institutions and communities. In 1985, Assistant U.S. Attorney Stuart R. Grabois took over the investigation and identified Jose Antonio Ramos, a convicted child sexual abuser, as a primary person of interest and became central to the investigative focus. In addition, Ramos had connections to a woman previously hired by the Patz family to walk Atan home from school, linked to investigation. Earlier reports from 1982 indicated Ramos had attempted to lure boys into a drain pipe near his residence near his home area. When authorities searched the drain pipe, they discovered photographs of Ramos with young boys resembling Atan during evidence review. Further investigation revealed Ramos was in custody in Pennsylvania for unrelated child molestation charges at the time of inquiry. In 1990, while cooperating in legal proceedings, Ramos reportedly made statements suggesting involvement in a child rape incident on the day of Etan's disappearance, though he did not explicitly name Etan in custody context. In 1991, a jailhouse informant claimed Ramos had knowledge of Etan's fate and allegedly drew a map of the school bus route, indicating familiarity with Etan's daily movements within jail setting. Despite strong suspicion, Ramos was never criminally charged in Etan's disappearance, according to official records formally documented. Stan and Julie Patz filed a wrongful death lawsuit in New York State Court against Jose Ramos. During the proceedings, Ramos refused to answer questions under oath. In 2004, the court ruled in favor of the Patz family and awarded $2 million in damages. However, the family was never able to collect this amount. Ramos was never criminally prosecuted for Etan Patz's murder. He had previously served a 20-year prison sentence for child molestation and was released in 2012, after which he was arrested again for a Megan's Law violation. The section also notes that over time, the Patz family ultimately reconsidered their belief in Ramos's responsibility after later developments in the case. Overall, the proceedings highlight the civil judgment lack of financial recovery and unresolved questions surrounding Ramos's legal accountability in the Atan Patz case. Within legal system context, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. reopened the case in 2010, initiating renewed investigative efforts that eventually led to a major search operation in 2012. On April 19, 2012, FBI and NYPD teams excavated the basement of 127B Prince Street in Soho, located near Etan's home. The location had been renovated after 1979 and previously served as a handyman's workshop and storage space. The excavation lasted 4 days but did not produce any conclusive evidence. Authorities publicly confirmed that nothing significant related to the case was found. This section emphasizes the renewed investigative effort decades after the disappearance and the continued lack of physical evidence recovered from the original neighborhood area. Investigators continued systematically reviewing all available records and leads. Further, 2012 marked the breakthrough when Pedro Hernandez became central to the Atan Patz investigation. Hernandez, a 51-year-old New Jersey man, was taken into custody after allegedly implicating himself in the disappearance. Law enforcement stated Hernandez confessed to strangling the child and wrote, "I'm sorry, I shook him." He also claimed he disposed of remains in a garbage area. In 1979, Hernandez was an 18-year-old working at a neighborhood convenience store during the incident. No physical evidence initially supported his confession at the time of arrest. Investigators later noted corroborating claims, including statements suggesting Hernandez made prior confessions in informal or religious settings. A grand jury indicted him in November 2012 on charges of second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His defense argued he suffered from schizotypal personality disorder and a low IQ affecting statement reliability. The case proceeded through court filings and continued examination of Hernandez's confession and charges. Followed thereafter, Hernandez pleaded not guilty in December 2012, and defense challenged confession validity, arguing obtained after extensive police questioning. A judge ruled sufficient evidence existed for trial, and hearings determined admissibility of statements. The trial began in 2015, but ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. A retrial in 2016 resulted in Hernandez being found guilty in February 2017 of kidnapping and felony murder. He was sentenced in April 2017 to 25 years to life in prison. In 2020, the conviction was upheld by an appellate court. However, on July 21, 2025, a federal appellate panel overturned the conviction, ruling jury instructions were erroneous and ordering a new trial or release. In November 2025, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office announced plans for a retrial required to begin by June 2026. Legal motions to dismiss were rejected in April 2026. The section concludes, noting Itam Patz's body was never found and he was declared legally dead in 2001, leaving case unresolved despite decades of proceedings. The case remains pending awaiting retrial as legal proceedings continue into 2026 under court supervision. Asha Jekwila Degree was born on August 5, 1990, and raised in Shelby, North Carolina, United States, on Oakrest Drive in a rural edge residential subdivision near Charlotte metropolitan area region. She lived with parents Harold and Aquila Degree and brother O'Brien in structured home environment. Harold worked dock loader at Pittsburgh Plate Glass, while Aquila worked at Kauai Manufacturing Plant. Family maintained structured routine, focused household, where children entered home after school independently and completed responsibilities centered on homework and family expectations daily each day. The Degrees emphasized protective upbringing, limiting outside influences, keeping children close to family, church, and school with restricted external exposure. They had no computer in the home and expressed concerns about external dangers and general fears affecting children in their everyday environment at home setting. Asha was cautious, shy, and content at home, frightened of dogs. Attending Falston Elementary 4th grade and active in basketball. On February 13, 2000, Asha Degree and her brother followed their usual routine. After spending time at church earlier in the day from a relative's home, the siblings returned home and went to bed around 8 p.m., sharing a room. That night, an unexpected power outage occurred in the neighborhood after a nearby car accident, leaving the household without electricity for several hours. The power was restored around 12:30 a.m., at which point Harold Degree checked on his children and found both Asha and O'Brien asleep. Later, around 2:30 a.m. on February 14th, Harold checked again and once more saw both children asleep in their beds. During the early morning hours, O'Brien later recalled hearing Asha's bed squeak, which he interpreted as her simply shifting in her sleep. This moment is understood as the last time she was heard inside the home. Asha packed bag and left during stormy night. On the morning of February 14, 2000, Aquila Degree woke around 5:45 a.m. to begin preparing her children for school. Because of the earlier power outage, she planned to draw a bath for them before their 6:30 alarm. When she entered the children's shared bedroom, she found O'Brien in his bed, but Asha was missing. Aquila searched the home and checked family vehicles, but Asha was nowhere to be found. Harold suggested she might have gone to his mother's house across the street, but a phone call confirmed she was not there. This quickly escalated the situation into panic, and Aquila alerted Harold. She then contacted her own mother, who advised her to call the police. By approximately 6:40 a.m., law enforcement arrived at the residence. Police dogs were brought in, but were unable to pick up Asha's scent. Meanwhile, Ikwila went through the neighborhood calling for her daughter, alerting residents and quickly gathering attention from the community. Friends, family, neighbors, and church members joined the search efforts, canceling their plans to assist. Despite widespread involvement, the initial search yielded very little evidence. A single mitten was found, though Ikwila stated it did not belong to Asha, and no winter clothing appeared to be missing from the home. This marked beginning of urgent investigation confirming disappearance, not simple absence. Case. Following the initial report of Asha Degree's disappearance, a large-scale search operation was launched across the surrounding area. Community members, law enforcement, and volunteers worked together to search the vicinity where she was last seen and surrounding rural landscape. Flyers were distributed widely and multiple potential leads were investigated, ranging from reported sightings to abandoned structures and wells. On February 15th, investigators discovered several items in a shed at a nearby business along Highway 18, close to where Asha was last seen running into the woods. These items included candy wrappers, a pencil, a green marker, and a yellow hair bow. Asha's parents identified some of these items as belonging to her. Alongside them was a wallet-sized photograph of a girl the family did not recognize, later reported to possibly depict a friend of Asha's. Despite the discovery of these personal belongings, there was no clear indication of Asha's whereabouts. The items became the only physical evidence found during the early search period. On February 16th, Ikwila also noticed that Asha's favorite clothing, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe, was missing from her room. After 1 week, initial search called off. 9,000 man-hours, effort 2 to 3 mile radius. During the investigation into Asha Degree's disappearance, authorities examined multiple theories. Early in the case, initial assumptions focused on the possibility that she had run away, supported by a packed book bag and clothing items. However, investigators found no clear personal or environmental reason suggesting a voluntary departure from home. The State Bureau of Investigation and FBI later joined the case to assist with further analysis. Experts noted that most runaway children are older than Asha, who was only 9 years old at the time. Additionally, no evidence of family dysfunction or academic struggles was identified that might explain a runaway scenario. Despite this, law enforcement still considered runaway behavior while also acknowledging the possibility of something going wrong after she left the home. Officials proposed a dual consideration. She may have become lost or may have been abducted after leaving the roadside area. Investigators emphasized that her actions, including packing items in advance and leaving during early morning hours, suggested some planning. However, no confirmed motive or trigger for her departure was established, which complicated the case classification. Over time, the lack of concrete evidence of survival beyond the disappearance window shifted focus toward possible abduction scenarios. Ultimately, investigators continued evaluating both possibilities as the case remained unresolved and evidence failed to confirm any single explanation at that time period. Asha Degree's disappearance quickly gained national attention. Within a month of the incident, her family appeared on the Montel Williams show to raise awareness and encourage public assistance in locating her. Additional coverage was provided through major programs such as America's Most Wanted and The Oprah Winfrey Show, significantly increasing national visibility. In March 2000, authorities installed a full-size billboard along Highway 18 near the area where Asha was last seen. The billboard featured her image and identifying information, serving as a long-term public reminder of the case. In 2001, further awareness efforts included a NASCAR initiative where driver Travis Kittleson displayed Asha's image on his car during a televised event. He stated the intention was to help bring attention to the case and potentially assist in her Recovery. These efforts reflected sustained attempts by both the family and supporters to keep Asha's disappearance in public view. The ongoing media presence ensured that her case remained active in national discussions about missing children. Despite this visibility, no confirmed leads emerged from media-driven exposure during this early phase at that time. In August 2001, over a year after Asha Degree's disappearance, workers during a construction project off Highway 18 in Burke County, 26 miles north of Shelby, uncovered her book bag buried inside 2 black trash bags. The book bag contained including Asha's name and phone number. The discovery prompted FBI involvement, transporting evidence to Quantico, Virginia for forensic examination. In 2020, the FBI confirmed additional contents found within the book bag. These included Dr. Seuss McElligot's Pool and New Kids on the Block t-shirt. Investigators noted the items did not appear originally owned by Asha. The book was identified as coming from her elementary school library. The item suggested external involvement in handling or placement of bag, adding complexity to investigation. No direct conclusions about responsibility or Asha's location were confirmed from discovery. The book bag remains a key piece of evidence and the only major item definitively linked to Asha recovered after disappearance. In the years following the initial investigation, several leads were pursued, though many resulted in dead ends. In 2004, authorities investigated a tip involving potential human remains at an intersection in Lawndale, but the bones discovered were determined to be animal remains. In 2005, Asha's image was featured on service vehicles by North Carolina companies as part of awareness efforts. The FBI also released an age-progressed image estimating her appearance at age 29. These efforts were intended to keep her case active in the public eye. The Degree family established a scholarship in Asha's name and organized annual walks to the highway billboard site. These walks became a consistent tradition to honor her memory and maintain attention on the case. In 2015, the FBI reopened the investigation, offering a monetary reward for information. This renewed effort included revisiting evidence and witness statements. Investigators continued to explore theories, including abduction scenarios. In 2016, investigators reported a possible sighting of Asha Degree entering a dark green late 1960s or early 1970s vehicle near Highway 18. The vehicle was described as a Lincoln Continental Mark IV or Ford Thunderbird with visible rust damage. In 2017, the FBI deployed its Child Abduction Rapid Deployment (CARD) team to assist, working alongside local and state authorities. Hundreds of interviews were conducted in continued efforts to identify new leads. In 2018, investigators highlighted items from Asha's book bag, a Dr. Seuss library book, and a New Kids on the Block t-shirt. In 2020, inmate letter claiming knowledge of Asha's fate investigated, but led to no resolution. Later in 2024, authorities executed a search warrant based on evidence, recovering a vehicle. No human remains found. By February 2025, Cleveland Sheriff's Office reclassified case homicide investigation. Subsequent warrants seized electronic devices, communication records, property searched. April 2025, ongoing unknown. The first confirmed victims of the Colonial Parkway killings were Kathy Thomas, 27, and Rebecca Dowski, 21, respectively. On October 9, 1986, they were last seen leaving University of William and Mary Lab at 6:30 p.m. They were in a romantic relationship, and Thomas had visited Colonial Parkway for privacy. 3 days later, on October 12, a jogger found their white 1980 Honda Civic down an embankment near Cheatham. A neck's overlook by the York River. Autopsies showed rope burns on wrists and necks, strangulation marks, and deep throat slashing that nearly decapitated. both victims during the attack at the scene. Hair in Thomas's hand suggested struggle. No sexual assault valuables remained untouched. Diesel fuel poured but not ignited at scene. Authorities believe the crime scene may not have been primary due to minimal blood. FBI profiling suggested law enforcement involvement. In 2026, DNA evidence linked Alan Wade Wilmer, Sr. to the murders, identifying him as responsible decades after the crime. On September 19, 1987, David Lee Knobling, age 20, and Robin Margaret Edwards, age 14, disappeared after Knobling drove to meet Edwards for a planned outing to a movie screening. Knobling left his home around midnight, followed shortly by Edwards. 2 days later, Knobling's black Ford Ranger was discovered at Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge, with the engine still running, radio and wipers on, and both doors open, suggesting sudden abandonment. Inside the truck, Knobling's wallet was found, eliminating robbery as a motive, along with clothing items. But there was no immediate sign of the victims. On September 23rd, their bodies were recovered from the James River shoreline, washed ashore approximately 100 feet apart. Both victims had been shot. Edwards was executed with a shot to the back of the head, while Knobling suffered 2 gunshot wounds. Edwards was partially undressed, though whether sexual assault occurred was unclear, and later investigators concluded she had been assaulted. Location and circumstances suggested a coordinated abduction and disposal near water, drawing comparisons to the Dowski-Thomas murders, involving similar targeting of young couples in isolated Lover's Lane environments, with both crime scenes within driving distance of the Colonial Parkway corridor, strengthening early suspicions of a linked offender. 2024 DN, a links Alan Wilmer, Brian Craig Pettinger, 25, disappeared on December 4, 1987. After attending a ballroom dance studio in Hampton, where he trained as an instructor. He was last seen around 11:30 p.m., and his car was found in shopping mall parking lot with no crime scene indicators. 2 months later, on February 3, 1988, his body was recovered from marshy James River near Suffolk, bound at wrists and ankles with a rope around his neck. Blunt force trauma was found, and investigators believe he was thrown into the water alive and drowned. The case remains unsolved. Possible links to regional killings due to proximity and victim profiles. He worked for a security company tied to individuals linked to other victims, including Robin Edwards' family connections. A suspect, Wayne Elliott Mack, fellow dance instructor last seen with him, died by suicide, with no link. Laurie Ann Powell Compton, age 18, disappeared on March 8, 1988. After leaving her boyfriend following an argument. She was last seen walking along Route 614 toward Route 17 late at night. Her disappearance initially led to suspicion focused on her boyfriend, Chris Cutler. On April 2, 1988, Powell's body was recovered from the James River near Ragged Island. The body showed multiple stab wounds to the back, and she was found nude. The cause of death indicated a violent attack, consistent with other regional homicides involving young victims in isolated rural or river-adjacent areas. Investigators later noted a potential indirect connection between Powell and other victims. Through employment, she had worked at a security company that also employed individuals connected to Brian Pettinger and the mother of Robin Edwards. This overlap became part of broader investigative interest in possible shared environments between victims. In November 2025, authorities publicly confirmed that Alan Wade Wilmer was responsible for Powell's murder, linking the case through DNA evidence. This forensic connection placed Powell within the confirmed pattern of Wilmer's crimes spanning multiple years and locations. Authorities emphasized that the DNA match was a critical development in resolving long-standing uncertainty surrounding the case and confirming The broader investigative links established over time across multiple jurisdictions. It reinforced Powell's inclusion within the documented pattern of offenses attributed to Wilmer, as confirmed through forensic review and case reconciliation efforts, completed in 2025 by investigators and analysts on April 10, 1988. College students Cassandra Lee Haley and Keith Call were reported missing after attending a party in the University Square area nearby. Call had picked up Haley earlier that evening, and they were later seen socializing separately at the gathering. Leaving between 11:30 p.m. and 2:25 a.m., Call's read 1982. Toyota Celica was discovered later the same day at York River, overlook on the Colonial Parkway with unusual staged conditions inside vehicle. Vehicle showed staging, keys in ignition, wristwatch on seat, clothing inside, empty beer cans present, and missing items including Haley's purse and Call's wallet reported. Police dogs tracked scent toward shoreline. Drowning theory emerged, but doubts followed. FBI identified fisherman driving blue pickup truck approaching couples. Later he was named Alan Wilmer and placed under surveillance. Search uncovered handcuffs and firearm. Vehicle cleaned and repainted. He passed polygraph and was released, linking impersonation, staged vehicles. Coordinated attacks on Colonial Parkway sections. Teresa Lynn Howell, age 29. Last seen leaving the Zodiac Club on Mercury Boulevard at approximately 2:30 a.m. July 1, 1989. Hours later, her body was discovered in nearby wooded area by construction worker. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Case remained unsolved for decades and was not initially connected to Colonial Parkway series. In 2022, DNA evidence linked Howell's murder to the Nobling Edwards case, establishing forensic connection across previously separate investigations. Further analysis later formally identified Alan Wade Wilmer as the perpetrator. In November 2025, authorities confirmed Wilmer's responsibility for Howell's death, solidifying her case within broader pattern of murders attributed to him. Development expanded known timeline of Wilmer's activity beyond earlier cases along Colonial Parkway corridor. Howell's murder reinforced geographic spread of crimes, extending beyond rural parkway areas into urban nightlife environments, including clubs and entertainment districts. Method of killing and forensic linkage positioned the case as part of broader serial pattern confirmed through DNA decades later. On September 5, 1989, Anna Maria Phelps, 18, and Daniel Lauer, 21, disappeared traveling toward Virginia Beach. Their gold 1972 Chevrolet Nova was found at a westbound Interstate 64 rest stop in New Kent County. Its position contradicted intended route, with keys in ignition and both doors unlocked. Dirt and grass stains off-road driving, and personal items including Phelps's purse inside, ruling out robbery. A roach clip was found moved, suggesting post-incident handling the vehicle. On October 19th, hunters discovered skeletal remains in a wooded area near the interstate. The bodies partially decomposed and covered with an electric blanket from the vehicle. Cause of death undetermined due to decomposition, and sexual assault not be confirmed. A 2010 note in Phelps's belongings mentioned rest stop meeting, referencing blue van, name, phone number. Case remains unresolved, linked discussions to the Colonial Parkway pattern. On August 21, 1984, Michael Sturgis Margaret and Donna Lynn Hall were found stabbed with throats slit near Enrico. Both had been last seen planning a camping trip. Evidence included a staged vehicle, blood trail, and sedatives in their systems. Some investigators believe this may represent an early example of the same offender pattern. In 1985, Mary Kaiser Harding was found in the Rappahannock River. Her case involved suspects connected to individuals later associated with Alan Wilmer's family network, though another man was ultimately convicted and later exonerated after decades in prison. In 1996, Julianne Williams and Laura Winans were murdered in Shenandoah National Park while camping. They were bound, gagged, and killed with slashed throats. Their case was examined for possible similarities due to location on National Park Service land, though a suspect indictment was dismissed after DNA exclusion. Their case was examined for possible similarities due to location on National Park Service land, though a suspect indictment was dismissed after DNA exclusion. The Colonial Parkway murders investigation has long focused on identifying patterns across multiple double homicides involving young couples in isolated locations. Early forensic analysis suggested strangulation, stabbing, and shooting as recurring causes of death, often accompanied by staged vehicles and missing personal belongings. Several theories emerged over time. One suggested the killer may have impersonated a law enforcement officer, based on vehicle staging, access behavior, and early FBI speculation. Another theory proposed the involvement of a fisherman familiar with rivers and boats, supported by nautical evidence such as rope, diesel fuel use, and proximity of bodies to waterways. Vehicle staging inconsistencies across multiple cases suggested victims' cars were often moved after death. Investigators also considered the possibility of multiple offenders working together, as some cases showed levels of control that appeared difficult for a single individual. Behavioral analysts within law enforcement supported this theory, noting coordination in victim control and disposal. A recurring institutional connection emerged, involving a small private security company linked to multiple victims, though no definitive criminal conclusion was drawn from this association alone. The most significant development came decades later with the identification of Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. DNA. Evidence linked him conclusively to multiple murders, including Dowski Thomas, Nobling Edwards, Powell, and Howell. Additional forensic links continued to expand his confirmed involvement across cases previously considered unrelated. Wilmer had earlier been investigated, but cleared after passing polygraph test, and despite suspicion, his DNA was not entered into CODIS for years, which later drew criticism from victims' advocates.